Well, you know the number, $16 trillion in debt and counting. As the number grows larger, the country grows closer to toppling over the fiscal cliff. And joining us now from San Francisco is Julian Epstein, the former chief minority counsel to the House Judiciary Committee, and Ford O'Connell, a former advisor to Senator John McCain's presidential campaign. Thanks to both of you. Good to see you.
Well, thank you for having us on.
Good to see you. Good morning.
Julian, let's start with you. Do you think President Obama wants us to go over the fiscal cliff?
No, nobody wants us to go over the fiscal cliff. The estimates show that if we go over the fiscal cliff, it could cost us somewhere between 1 and 2 GDP points. Nobody thinks it's a good idea. But look, every single poll, including the Wall Street Journal, Pew, has shown that the American public overwhelmingly, by somewhere in the order of 70%, want a balanced approach. That is, of the $2 trillion in deficit reduction goal, about $1.5 trillion in revenues and $1 trillion, the other half, in spending cuts. In fact, that's where most economists and most deficit reduction experts are, this idea of balance. That's where the election, the American people was. The president campaigned on this issue. And in fact, that's where John Boehner was a week ago. John Boehner said we should do $1 trillion in tax revenues and $1 trillion in cuts. And then he took that to his own Republican caucus, and his Republican caucus was unwilling to support him on that. So it's impossible to get a deal if the Republicans put forward a leader who then presents a proposal to the president that the Republicans themselves don't even back up.
Ford, I'll put the same question to you. Do you think that the president wants to go over the fiscal cliff? It is, after all, in some respects, a balanced approach. It achieves many of the tax increases, the revenue increases that the president wanted to see, and it also imposes pretty strict, devastating cuts, 10% across the board at the Department of Defense, which many people have suggested could be used to fund long-term entitlements.
Well, I don't think the president wants to go over the fiscal cliff, but I do think he wants to break House Republicans, not just on this issue, but on several issues down the road. And essentially, you know, John Boehner was right with Plan B. We needed to pass that because we need leverage on President Obama, because essentially President Obama is not offering a balanced approach. Yes, he's talking about cutting spending, but he's not talking about preserving Medicare and Social Security, which is 62 to 65% of the federal budget. And essentially, Republicans need to come to a deal and essentially use the debt ceiling limit to really preserve Medicare and Social Security. I do think we are going to eventually reach an agreement here.
Do you think?
Yeah, I don't think that's entirely fair. The president put on the table things that many people in his party don't like. He put on the chain CPI on Social Security, and he agreed to somewhere around $400 billion in Medicare cuts. So he put entitlements on the table in big numbers. It is the Republicans. And look, John Boehner was the guy who said a week ago, yeah, we got to have $1 trillion in revenues. Yeah, we got to have $1 trillion in cuts. That was the basic framework for the deal. So then the decision in terms of where the tax rates would go up, whether it was $250 a year or $500 a year, what that threshold was, that was within the realm of achievement. That was in the art of the possible. So we had the framework for the deal until the Republicans in the House said, no way, pulled the rug out from under the feet of John Boehner, and that's what's made the deal impossible.
How
this
about that, Ford?
Insistence on the part of the extremists in the Republican Party that it's my way or the highway.
Well, Julian, I certainly agree that game theory is clearly a lost art among House conservatives. They don't recognize that the president is going to get his way. The question is, how do we minimize that? And I really think what's happened here is that the Republican position has been weakened because of what happened with Plan B. But I do think that Speaker Boehner has actually been the only one here really between the Senate and the White House that's shown true leadership. I do think we're going to get a deal. But if you think that the president, what he's offered on entitlements is really a way forward with respect to spending, you're kidding yourself. We need structural reform to Social Security and Medicare, and essentially we are kicking the can down the road. But I do agree with you that a deal needs to get done.
So both of you will leave on this note.
With all due respect, I agree with everything you just said there. And I do think that Boehner was trying to show some leadership, although he didn't have any support of the caucus. But I don't think that, with all due respect, that Boehner is putting out structural reform on either Medicare or Social Security. Boehner did not put forward the Ryan plan on Medicare because it didn't work very well in the election.
Well, Julian,
so the Republicans who have
it's
talked,
the Christmas season. I believe in miracles. Something's going to happen.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully Santa Claus will arrive.
Gentlemen, I think if the Republicans actually
We're flat out of time, and we got to go. It's a good start to the discussion. And Ford, we certainly hope that Santa Claus does arrive, if not on December 25th, at least on December 31st. That's when we really need him this year. Thank you, gentlemen.
We'll keep our fingers crossed.